Yipee-Ki-Yay, Mr. Falcon.
So it's the witchy season, spooky times.
Yeah.
We're creeping up on Halloween. And it's got us thinking about monsters. Monster movies. How would you, how are we going to define what is a monster movie?
Oh, jeez. I don't know, man. I mean, I think it's pretty loose. I think you really only have one rule. In order for it to be a monster movie, there's got to be a monster in it.
All right.
I mean, do you have other criteria?
Well, I mean, is it one monster? Like, you say monster movie and you think of, like, you know, Frankenstein and Dracula and shit. So, like, is it one, like, main monster?
Well, no, because, like, I feel like one of the ones...
A gaggle.
A gaggle would count. You know, like like Critters comes to mind. Remember Critters?
Night of the Lepus.
Night of the Lepus. Sure, that's a monster movie.
Yeah, I remember
the
Critters.
cuddliest monsters you've ever seen.
I remember Critters. Night of the Lepus, if you haven't seen it, anyone, just go fucking see that. That's
hilarious.
Isn't the guy from Star Trek in that?
I forget, man.
The doctor? I think the doctor from Star Trek is in it. It's about giant mutant radioactive rabbits tearing across the countryside, eating people.
But they're
fantastic.
Like domestic pet rabbits. It's like this,
they don't look like wild hares at all.
It's
they
like
just
the
look like
rabbit
bunnies.
you would see in someone's backyard in a little hutch.
Yeah,
you know.
And they like smear like pink stuff on their mouth, make it look like they're all bloody. And they're just little rabbits in like doll houses and shit. It's great.
Oh God.
And they all get electrocuted. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. All right, so it's loose. It's real loose.
It's real loose.
I'm okay with this. I'm okay with this. We probably talked about what our true favorite monster movies are before this in other episodes.
Yeah, it's come up.
So, you know, like you're a big fan of Creature from the Black Lagoon, which is a great monster movie.
That's a good one.
By the classic definition.
Well, yeah, if we're going to go by the classic definition and like leave a little room to keep things loose, I have two. But we'll get there.
Okay. And I guess I don't know. American Werewolf in London is one I've talked about before. That's a monster movie.
Of course. Sure. I mean, werewolf movies are I think are like automatically included.
But these are also kind of like classics, so
yeah.
You know, it doesn't. I don't know if that counts. So we're trying to like dig a little deeper, like a deeper cut. Our favorite deeper cut monsters. How about that? I like that. That's good for me. Is it good for you?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Why don't you go first? Like I have like a main one and like a runner up, and like you should also consider.
Okay.
It's me. What do you expect?
Well,
man?
I mean, right off the bat, I'm about to like test the limits of the criteria here.
Motherfucker.
And like,
okay, go ahead.
You say monster movie, and there is one monster that I think is widely considered to be the king of all the monsters.
It's going to be a real giant monster, isn't it?
It's fucking Godzilla.
I knew it. I know it's a monster. It's a monster.
Is that a monster movie?
Yeah, I mean, what the fuck else would it be?
Which
one though? There's like,
I love Godzilla.
There's like 50 of them though. Like what? The one with Matthew Broderick we're talking about, I assume.
Of course,
right? With the wonderful P. Diddy song. That's my favorite. That's a great film.
Oh God! Don't get me started on that piece of garbage. That's like the only one I can't watch.
That was like the one and only Godzilla movie I ever saw when I was younger, because I actually somehow ended up in the theater to see that fucking thing. Because like everyone in 6th grade was going to see it or whatever.
Yeah, I saw it. We all saw it. I hated it.
That fucking song was everywhere.
Yeah, you couldn't escape it.
Blasphemy of Kashmir. I hope Jimmy Page bought like a mansion because of that song or something.
He already had one, man. But
all right, so Godzilla. Tell me about Godzilla. What is it? What I don't get Godzilla.
Well,
So
I think you got to go back to. Have you ever seen the original, like the 1954 black and white Gojira?
You watch that and the old King Kong together. Yeah, sure, I've seen it.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's a classic. It's a good movie before it got done to death. But it's also, when you look at it with, like, we grew up with Godzilla. It was like it was always around. It had been in all these different pop culture references. But you look at the original and when it was made in 54, and that was like,
It looks older.
it does look older. It's a different style of filmmaking, but you think
That's
about
the same year that Creature from the Black Lagoon was made.
It sure
by
is.
the way. Look at you.
Yeah.
Look at you, like 1954.
54.
It was your year.
54 was a big year, but that movie was like 10 years removed from Japan having been nuked during World War II.
That's true.
And you look
That's true.
You look at that movie, and it's the fear of that devastating nuclear destructive power made manifest in a giant walking fire-breathing abomination. And when you think about the intention there, that was a very intentional choice to try to show what that event did to Japan. It makes Godzilla, it gives it some weight, and it's not just a dude in a suit when you think about it that way. He was born of the A-bomb and just comes and destroys everything. And it plays on a lot of fears and anxieties that arose out of that.
And I guess it's part of its appeal, worldwide, the character and its origins and everything, because when it came out, I mean, the rest of the world was still dealing with the Cold War, too. Like, they didn't have the experience, but the threat was there, and there were nuclear tests going off all the time. And
you saw that footage of the bombs going off in Japan are like, burned in all of our brains. We all can just picture that mushroom cloud, And
it came back into the public mind too with Oppenheimer in recent times, and those themes you're talking about, they were huge in I did see the newer Godzilla movie. Was it Godzilla -1? Is that it?
Oh yeah, Godzilla minus
the good one.
Godzilla -1.
Okay,
I still haven't had a chance to watch that yet. I can't wait to sit down and finally watch that.
Yeah, they dig into those original themes real hard, like it's post World War II is where it begins and shit.
If I'm not mistaken, I think the protagonist is like he's like a disgraced
vet
soldier because he was a kamikaze that survived, which you're not supposed to do.
Right. Yeah. Like all the protagonists are vets in one way or another.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's his thing. Like every time someone finds out he was a kamikaze, they're like, "Ew."
Well, here's the thing, though. The first Godzilla is amazing. It's the best one of all, in my opinion. It's not my favorite, though.
Okay. Oh, okay.
My favorite is, now this is where like 10-year-old
Matthew
Tom
Broderick,
comes in.
right?
Right. It's Destroy All Monsters. You ever seen Destroy All Monsters?
No, I have not.
Dave,
no.
It's like the Royal Rumble of kaiju movies. It was. I had seen Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. It was familiar of like the eye-popping, mind-blowing awesomeness of two monsters meeting up and duking it out and thinking of like who would win. So Destroy All Monsters is literally the three-headed beast Ghidorah versus every other monster in the whole thing. There's like Godzilla, there's Mothra, there's Rodan.
Mothra.
I
know Mothra.
Yeah, you know Mothra. Rodan, the big pterodactyl thing. Baby Godzilla's in it. I think his name
Baby Godzilla.
Baby Godzilla. Manila, I think his name is.
I knew that movie. I remember that when whatever era that movie came out in, the one that had Baby Godzilla.
Yeah.
That was when they made like Son of Kong.
Yep.
And those shits were all on TV all the time on like TBS and shit. I've seen them way too many times. I watched Son of Kong recently. I'm like, this is the Kong movie I've been remembering my whole life. Like I always thought it was the Jeff Bridges one or Jeff Bridges, right?
Jeff Bridges was
not.
Was just King Kong. I think it was just called King Kong.
No, I know that. Now I thought things that I remembered were from that movie, and they were actually from The shitty, weird Son of Kong movie is what I'm trying to say. Dwan.
What?
Dwan.
Juan?
The woman's name in the Jeff Bridges King Kong movie is Dwan.
Dwan.
D-W-A-N.
Is that
and they yell it
Jessica Lange?
all the time. Yes, it's a very young Jessica Lange, and her goddamn name is Dwan. And it just, my wife and I watched it one time, and we're like, is her fucking name Dwan? Is that what he's saying? And we looked it up, and yeah, it's fucking Dwan. And then we couldn't stop laughing every time someone screamed her name, which is usually Jeff Bridges. And it kind of ruined the movie for me. Not that it was that great of a movie. So how do you feel about King Kong movies? Is there love there too?
Oh, yeah.
They kind of cross over now,
Of
right?
Of course. You know of my deep and unabiding love for Big Trouble in Little
Giant
China.
monkeys. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Of course.
The reason I was even saw that movie was because my aunt, we already spent a lot of time at my grandmother's house, and my aunt lived with my grandmother, and she had like 4 movies on tape. One of them was King Kong versus Godzilla, the old 60s one. And we watched that movie so much. We demanded it to be put on the TV so often that my aunt like outlawed it. She's like, I cannot watch this movie again with you guys. Here, watch this instead. And she put on Big Trouble in Little China, and my mind was blown. But like before that, it was like we had soured her on that movie. She could not stand to see another second of it.
You're like refugee children in a hut with like a VCR and 4 tapes.
Yeah, man. I have fond memories. Man, I would watch that movie, and she had this little Knight Rider toy. She had like 6 toys, and one of them was like what's his name? Jesus. David Hasselhoff Knight Rider action figure with the little cut with kit that went with it.
Yeah, I know the car was named Kid. I don't know what the fuck his name was in that show.
It was Michael Knight.
No. Was it?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Michael
that's
Knight.
Really on the
Kit was
nose.
always going, Michael.
Yeah, it was the principal from Boy Meets World.
Yeah, it was Mr.
The voice of the
Heaney.
car. Feeney.
Mr. Feeney.
Mr. Feeney.
But yeah.
Fuck were we just talking about? I don't like where my head just went.
King Kong versus Godzilla in my Knight Rider toy.
I do remember, like, I remember the satellite stashes of toys and media that you would have as a kid at other adults' houses that you would go to.
Yep.
And like, if they were childless, yeah, you had like this weird little box somewhere of like some bizarre toys that ended up there somehow that you would just make work somehow.
That's exactly what it was.
Yeah. And like a few movies. Yeah. No, I had that at like 2 aunts' houses at least, and grandparents' houses for sure.
But yeah, man.
And you had car stuff too. You had stuff you would take in the car.
That was my
distracted.
introduction to Godzilla and King Kong. Was
All right.
King Kong versus Godzilla.
Well, other than the social commentary, is there anything else?
What to
Makes
Godzilla?
it like your favorite? Yeah. That makes it your favorite.
I mean, yeah. It's just there's so many of them, and they run the gamut from like entries in the series that are absolute classics, like the first one, to just complete bizarre, nonsensical bullshit. They are all over the place, and I think
and they cost every range of budget, right? Like some look like they were made for $5 in the 80s, right? And it's very interesting.
Some of them are hilariously bad on purpose. Some of them are hilariously bad by accident, and I find every single one of them entertaining, warts and all.
So that's your absolute, out of all of them, that's your favorite one
is Destroy All Monsters.
Yeah,
because
that's the one.
The Royal Rumble. It's just there's 12 monsters on screen. It's all of them, and they're just duking it out.
You're into the assembly movie, not the origin story. Dig it.
Nice. I dig the origin story, but the assembly, like it was a lot of fun, especially when you're like 9.
All right, man. All right, cool. I'll go.
How about you? Yeah, what do you got?
This is one I don't think a lot of people saw, although it's got a fucking wild cast. It was a movie called Life.
Life?
Life. It was just called Life from 2017. and it was a outer space movie. Listen to this. It had the Jake Gyllenhaal. It had the Ryan Reynolds. It had the Rebecca Ferguson.
Oh, word?
And it had, I'm going to fuck his name up, Hiroyuki Sanada. He was in, the Wolverine movie, the one where he goes to Japan.
Yeah.
He was the son of the main bad guy in that.
Okay.
He was in that series that's nominated for all the Emmys, the miniseries Shogun.
Shogun? Yeah. He's great.
The newer.
He's great.
Yeah.
He's in John Wick 4.
Yeah, he's really good. Yeah, he has a good. Yeah, that's right.
He
that's
plays
right. He
Scorpion in the Mortal Kombat movie.
Oh, does he? I didn't know that.
Yeah, the newer one.
Yeah, it all takes place on a spaceship, so it's a small cast, of course. But it's it scares the shit out of me on some kind of a weird primal level, and it's a near future space movie. So it's not like Aliens where it's flung in the future. Like, it's a spacecraft that looks very much like something we would build now, and it's about it starts in media res, kind of. It's about we send a probe to Mars, and it finds something that could be some form or vestige of biological life, right? And it rockets a sample off planet, and these scientists are heroes, are in a science vessel, and their job is to intercept the capsule and dock with it and examine the sample in the safety of space, right? So it's like a lab in space. It's like the ultimate quarantine, just in case. And as the probe's coming up, it gets hit by some meteors and shit, and it's not working right, and that's where we come into the movie. And it's a difficult docking, and they fucking manage it, and long story short, there is something in the sample, and once they put it in like a atmosphere again, it wakes up and starts to grow, and it's not. You know how like a lot of times aliens are humanoid.
Yeah.
And even the alien in
they're
Aliens
like ambulatory in some way. They have arms and legs.
Like they're always kind of seem like they were built for a planet with like Earth, sort of. Well, this thing looks like it was made for the water, right? It's kind of like a ethereal octopus, sort of. It's clearish. It's like translucent, and it's so fucking creepy, and unassuming at first, right? And just the violence it does to these people in this movie, the characters, and the ways they die is just it's shit that I never thought of before, and that I just never saw. All right, so we were saying monster movie though. Were you ever like scared of Godzilla? As like a little kid or something?
No, I was never scared of Godzilla.
Because I know some people have, megalophobia, and like just even the idea of something that big that can move freaks them out.
No,
so I thought maybe no.
I never found it scary. I always thought it was more cool than scary.
Okay.
Like I watched that monster movie as like a spectacle, not to be like scared by it. But like, I mean, there are some that are definitely like, are we calling The Thing a monster movie?
I would, yeah.
That was a monster movie that scared me, and it's like, oh god, it's so good. The movie's incredible.
That's how I feel about this one. This monster genuinely freaks me out, and I think the test of a good monster movie that's scary, not just interesting but scary, is if you think about it later, right? Like, and there's some scenes from this one that I just have not been able to forget. The ways all of the characters die is inventive.
Oh boy,
to say the least. And I mean, and I thought, going into this, I didn't watch it for a long time. I just saw it randomly on streaming something one time and said, "Oh fuck it." I thought, oh, another alien in a spaceship movie. That's been done a couple times, right? I didn't think anything good new could come of it, except maybe I didn't even think a new Alien sequel could be good. That was a shock. But
Yeah, that was a pleasant surprise.
There's something really visceral about this, and I can't really put my finger on it. The monster itself and the way it works is fucking freaky and scary, and nothing can kill it, which is freaky and scary. And it doesn't have any identifying characteristics of like an animal or something that's alive. There's no eyes, there's no face, but it thinks, and you know it thinks, and it's smart.
How do you know it thinks?
Right? Because it reasons. Like it sets traps, and it exploits weaknesses, and you can tell it can think, and it outsmarts the people a couple times, and it learns, and it crawls inside of you and eats your guts out of your asshole.
Oh God.
So like, I know a lot of people hate Ryan Reynolds. If you want to see Ryan Reynolds get his insides eaten out by a space squid,
oh God, that sounds
through
horrible.
Through his mouth face hole, this is the movie for you, because that fucking happens in this. Spoilers, that happens in this, and you should be there for it. And the ending is fucking awesome. Did I say that already? The ending is awesome.
The ending is awesome. They stick the landing.
Some people didn't like it. It was because it's a little bit of a twisty ending, but fuck them. It was fantastic. And you don't know who's going to die through it. I didn't know. I didn't predict it right the first time. And it's a great cast. So when you get a great cast doing a horror movie, and there's no cheesy dialogue, and there's like just enough exposition and character depth, and not too much. It doesn't get draggy. It's good. It's just really it's shocking more people didn't. Well, it's not, because it wasn't marketed well. No one ever heard of it. And then like me, the first like 10 times I saw it on streaming, I'm like, ugh, another Alien ripoff.
I had heard of this movie. I saw a trailer. I remember the trailer for it. I was like, that looks okay. And then like I forgot about it completely.
No, man, it was it's on the server. So if you ever do actually feel like watching something that's creepy for Halloween,
'tis the season.
It's new. It is. And I mean, Christ, it's the season for rewatching stuff. So a new one could be welcome, right?
Yeah, I would love something I haven't seen before.
All right, so that's my top one. What's your backup?
My backup? Oh man.
Yeah, you got a runner-up, second place.
I mean, The Thing. The Thing is really...
Yeah, we've talked about The Thing, but
we've
yeah,
gone
that
on
counts.
about
We
The
got
Thing
to...
at length. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, there are... You know what?
It's a great monster
Are we going to call
movie,
this
though.
a monster movie? I watched a movie, and I'm thinking about what you said, like, about something that's scary. It's actually scary, and you're, like, really nervous to see what's going on. Would you categorize The Descent as a monster movie?
Yeah, that was actually on my short list of 3. Is The Descent.
Yeah.
That's from 2005, I think.
I thought it was 2010. Maybe I'm wrong.
2005 was the first one. I love that movie.
That movie
it's a fantastic
is nuts.
movie. Freaked me out pretty bad the first time I saw it. And the cool thing about that movie is they didn't film even one scene inside of a cave.
When did they film it?
They built the set.
Oh, okay.
They built the set, and it's all dark. It's all mostly darkness, lit by headlamps and whatever they have on them. So they were able to create the illusion of different cave spaces on a set. That's why it looks so good for something that was kind of an indie horror movie that I think was made in Europe. It was fantastic.
That movie is bonkers.
And the beginning, right? Holy shit!
It's been a while since
about,
I've seen it. What are you referring to?
People talk about Final Destination. There's a Final Destination-esque scene in the beginning when her family gets killed. In the very beginning.
Yeah.
When the protagonist's family gets killed in the car accident.
That's right.
With the rebar. Holy fuck, that was brutal, man. That was brutal. And the hospital scene was brutal.
And
The whole
that,
movie's fucking brutal. The ending is fucking brutal.
yep, they're just like so close to getting out.
Did you ever see the second one?
I think I did.
Dude, the second one is bonkers too. It's really
You know what?
shockingly good.
You know what I like about it too? It plays on such a simple concept. It's just fear of the dark.
And what could be in it.
Fear of the dark.
Yeah, the monsters are good though.
They are good.
Let's
like,
give it that.
The monsters are good, but in a vacuum they're good. But when you just add the fact that it's pitch dark and you can't and you can't see them, but they can.
Well,
see.
that's probably what makes them good too. Like if I saw the costumes and behind the scenes, they're probably not that great. But the movie's so dark, they look fantastic.
Yeah.
Cover them with some blood.
It's
and
the oldest
gore
trick
and
in the
wet
book.
But it works. It works. And it's an all-female cast, too.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Great movie.
That was an awesome movie.
Great movie. Yeah, that's definitely a really good deep-cut monster movie for sure. Well, I won't spoil it, but they weren't always monsters.
Watch it.
All right. Cool. I got one more I want to bring up.
What is it?
This one's actually a little older, but not super old. 1997.
97.
I don't know if you've ever seen this
Wait
one.
a minute. Hold on. 97. I'm going to guess. 97.
Oh.
Is it The Relic?
Fuck you. How'd you know that?
Because I loved it too, man. Did I get it?
How did you know that?
No, listen, because I remember we had mentioned we were going to do some monster movies, and I remember seeing that. I rented it with my dad on VHS when it came out, and it was about that time, and we loved it. We loved it. But it was just such a surprise. We knew nothing about this movie. We watch it, and my dad and I were blown away.
Yeah, this was definitely one of those, it's new and Blockbuster, so we rented it.
It was just, it was the same thing with us, man.
I always remembered it too, because it was I don't want to say generic, but it was like, I don't know, like a high B-list cast.
You had Tom
Penelope
Sizemore.
Ann Miller. Yeah, young Tom Sizemore playing a cop. Penelope Ann Miller, who you'd know, if you don't know who she is, you'd know her if you saw her.
You remember the name of the little museum curator, the museum director? That tiny little woman.
Oh, she was in a whole bunch of stuff back then too.
I think she was in Kindergarten Cop.
Yeah, she looks like that cartoon.
I give you bonus points if you get her name.
I don't know her name.
Her name is Linda Hunt.
Linda Hunt. That's unfortunate. Okay, I just got the cast list.
All right,
up.
more bonus points.
Dr. Ann Cuthbert. What?
Do you remember the name of the monster?
The name of the monster. It was a dude, wasn't it?
No, it was like there was like a statue in the museum, right? I don't remember.
It was
the Cathoga.
Cathuga?
The Cathoga.
Cathuga. The CG in it is, there's a couple spots where it's rough. But again, they kept it dark, so
it was 1997 though.
Yeah, but
give them a pass.
But they lit it by like firelight, so it's not as bad as it could be. But there are some practical monster effects that are really fucking good, and I just like the whole thing is set in it's the Chicago Natural History Museum. Is that what it is?
It's either that or the Fields Museum. I can't remember.
I feel like it's Chicago.
It's
definitely not
Chicago.
New York. All right,
and the Fields Museum is
huge.
in Chicago.
It's a huge museum. It's huge. It reminds me of the Smithsonian in New York. It's just monstrous. And it goes like there's sub-levels and shit, and this giant fucking monster is like hanging out and eating security guards and sucking out their thalamus glands, right? Isn't that?
It eats the hypothalamus.
Hypothalamus just sucks it right out. And fresh adrenal gland to chew on. The Relic is awesome. It's a slow burn, and it's a little bit of a weird one, but it's one of those ones where the setting and just the originality of it, I think carry it through. And Sizemore's he's such a great dick cop.
Yes. He's a perfect dickhead, take no shit cop.
Yeah, and the monster isn't really what you expected it to be, I don't think. the first time around. It turns out to be something pretty.
It's like a lion lizard.
Yeah, it's freaky in how big it is and how quiet it is and able to hide. And then it does that breathing thing, right? And it smells really bad. I always thought that was a cool part. Obviously, you can't smell it in the audience, but the actors do it for us. And I always thought that was really neat.
That was a neat touch. I haven't seen that movie. I saw that movie in 1997. The one time.
I can't believe you fucking pulled that out of the hat. A lot of movies came out in 97, man.
Well, I mean, we're not talking
weird.
about a lot of movies. We're talking about monster movies. You say monster movie 1997. I mean, like that sounds like the relic to me.
Well,
hey,
I'm
listen,
walk
man.
away from it.
You know
with
what they
it.
say
What?
about great
What?
minds, dude? We're on the same page.
I guess. We're talking too much, I think, is what's happening. Our periods are syncing up. It's weird. So you talked about team-up monster movies. I think we just have to give a general honorable mention to what is, without saying, like the greatest monster movie of all time. It's Monster Squad.
Oh, God.
Like the Monster Squad. We did a whole episode on it, and
we did this one.
It's fantastic. It's our team-up monster movie from our youth, and it's fucking awesome. It's still awesome. I'm going to watch it again on Halloween night, as I do every year. Along with, what do you watch on Halloween night? Have we gone over this?
Yeah, I think so. But yeah, we watch Halloween. My wife is a huge the original Halloween.
Yeah, the OG.
Fan.
Yeah.
She loves it.
Right on.
Every
I usually watch that.
It.
You're not what is that fucking Charlie Brown thing that people watch?
I know, we don't watch it.
Or whatever. Yeah, I don't watch it.
I mean, you know what? I might watch it this year because the kids might be into it, but if it's just me and the wife, we're watching Halloween for sure.
Right on. I always try to watch Halloween, the Monster Squad, and I usually fall asleep to one of the old Universal ones.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. When I'm by myself around Halloween, I'm watching the Universal ones. Those are God, they just make me feel good. I can't explain
that
it.
or
They make me feel
Abbott
nice.
Costello Meet Frankenstein. Sometimes I'll watch that instead.
Yeah, that's
because it has them all. It has everybody.
It's so
even though
good.
it's a comedy, everybody's in that except Boris. No Boris.
No.
All right, Cats and Kittens, monster movies, cornerstone of any good Halloween breakfast.
It's moving. It's alive. It's alive. It's moving. It's alive. Oh, it's alive. It's alive. It's alive. It's alive. Oh, in the name of God. Now I know what it feels like to be Wise man. I'm gonna get out of here.
Whoever is bitten by a werewolf and lives becomes a werewolf himself.
Aren't you drinking? I never drink. Why?
We got a couple movies I want to talk about real quick. Halloween staples, if you will. Not really.
These
mine.
are not staples.
They're mine. They're for me, because I'm weird. And I have to scrape the bottom of the barrel all the time. Anyway, I got Tom to finally watch one of my weird werewolf movies. It isn't a werewolf movie. And he's going to tell us what he thinks about it. And I'm also going to tell you why Silver Bullet is such a great fucking movie. And it's not, but it should have been, and it could have been. And maybe it should get a remake, but I don't know. Let's go. So the first movie, 1981, Wolfen.
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 What does
Wolfen.
it even mean?
I don't know,
Oh,
man.
God.
It's some Native American jive. Is what they said in the movie. I didn't make that up. They said it in the movie.
No, yeah, somebody really said that's Native American jive.
Well, this is also a movie where is it Henry? What's his name? Henry James Olmos. Is that his name?
Edward James Olmos.
Edward James from fucking Battlestar Galactica. he plays a Native American in this. So take from that what you will.
Yeah. Yeah, he does.
First, I just want to mention how many fucking werewolf movies there were in the 80s.
There were a lot.
Like within a 10-year period, you had like the Company of Wolves, which is a little lesser known one, but still pretty popular. I don't like it, but it has a great poster. It scared the shit out of me as a kid. You might have seen it in like a rental store. It's a woman's head, and there's a wolf muzzle coming out of her widely stretched open mouth. Like it's like leaping out of her.
Yeah.
Scared the shit out of me when I saw it in the video store when I was a kid. Scared the shit out of me. There's a video store called Video Image. It was the first rental store that opened around here that we went to because we didn't have chains when they first started. It was a private joint. And they had posters everywhere. And a lot of times, that's what I remember. I never saw the movies, but I remember looking at the covers, wandering around, looking at the VHS boxes, and all the posters hanging around, man. I remember they had the coolest giant Jaws poster. I wonder whatever happened to that. It was, you remember how they used to do it? They used to have the box on the shelf with a styrofoam thing in it. And you had to take it to the counter and they'd give you the actual tape from like a vault.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in like a clear plastic container.
Well, yeah, it was a little different where I went. They had like you mean in the new releases or in like in the pit?
No, this was all of them. This was the whole store.
Yeah, you would go and there'd be like the boxes on the wall, and there'd be the clear plastic thing with a movie in it behind it. And if they were all gone, you knew they were out.
Well, that's what Blockbuster was like too, right? They had the one with the cover, and then it was in Blockbuster cases. Yeah, this one they had this was back when they had like one copy of every tape in the entire place. You know, is that if you watch old movies or TV shows and they have anything about rental places and they're like calling to reserve a copy, it's like literally they would get 2 copies of a movie because it cost them like $600 a copy or some shit.
Jesus.
Yeah, because at that moment, whenever that movie was coming out from rental stores, they weren't going anywhere else. They were like super, hand dubbed advanced copies.
It was like the only place you could get it.
Yeah, and then the studios knew, the distributors knew that they were going to be making money off renting it, so they charged them, and that's how it went. But that's why they used to charge so much if you lost the tape or stole it or broke it or whatever. So yeah,
that's nuts.
History for you. The price went down, quickly, and then it got real low once Blockbuster got into it and everything changed. But yeah, all right. So sorry, Company of Wolves, The Howling, big deal.
They made a bunch of those.
Yeah, American Werewolf in London, Teen Wolf, Silver Bullet, which we're going to be talking about, Wolfen, another Howling 2, awful. Monster Squad, which had a werewolf in it, counts, I think. Howling 3, right? Teen Wolf 2, another Howling. My Mom's a Werewolf, which you should never, ever watch. Don't watch that. Fright Night, I guess, sort of counts. It's got a vampire turning into a werewolf. I don't know, maybe not.
Yeah, we'll count Fright Night.
And, the classic Howling 5.
Jesus.
Yeah, they all came out in the 80s, man. There's some other really shit ones in there, like interspersed, but those were the big ones. That's a lot for one decade, especially when you realize they were competing with all those other horror franchises that were just churning out a sequel every year.
Yeah, the big ones.
Yeah, Jason literally made a Friday the 13th movie every year, I think, in most of the 80s. So, yeah. Cool. Wolfen. What'd you think, man? You saw it for the first time.
Oh, jeez. Yeah. I saw it for the first time, and I didn't do myself any favors by watching this movie at the end of the night. I was like, yeah, I'll have one more drink. I'll put on Wolfen. And then the next thing I know, I wake up with a start, and I'm like, I'm clearly missing some, shit that's critical to the plot. I'm like, I gotta rewind this. and
sorry.
that happened. No, that's okay. It wasn't the movie. It was just how late it was.
Yeah,
But
I got to mention this is from '81, so it's kind of got that '70s movie pace still.
yeah, it's old.
Yeah, it looks old. It feels old.
It looks old.
Yeah,
But
Go ahead.
It looks old, but it looks good. Let's say this. We'll start off with some positives. The movie looks crazy because of like where they filmed it.
Yeah.
Like the set pieces that they filmed in are just these bombed out buildings that are crumbling. They had like some live demolitions on camera.
Yeah, it was
like,
the South Bronx when it was falling apart. It was the old tenements down in the South Bronx when the city was finally starting to demolish them, and they'd just been empty shitholes for years and years. If you see any of the photos of that area from back then, you can't believe that it's actually New York. It's wild, man.
Yeah. It was a cool backdrop.
Yeah, you'll never get anything. You'll never get that again, like, for sure. Obviously, no one's ever going to film there again. So, and it's a good thing. It looks good. And I have the Blu-ray version, and it holds up. It looks nice and sharp. They saved it. Yeah. All right.
It did look good. And then like just to start out, to that movie just kicks right off with
the opening's pretty good.
Some creepy stuff. There's that one Vanderveer or whatever, that one rich real estate mogul,
and his wife in the park. Yeah,
and you get like the wolf cam, the wolf vision, the Wolfen camera.
Yeah,
and it's not quite heat vision. It's more like night vision, stalker vision. It was like predator vision kind of, but different.
Yeah, it was kind of like everything was outlined in heat vision colors, sort of.
It was cool. It was a neat gimmick. It didn't look nearly as bad as I had been led to believe, but it definitely added something to the atmosphere, and they did a lot of cool stuff to try to make it tense. Like when the thing is like you could see it peeking out from behind fences and trees, and you're watching it stalk someone, which I thought was pretty cool.
They used a lot of POV shots in this. I guess Halloween had just come out a couple of years ago and made that a in vogue thing to do in the genre. It really did feel, it had a feel to it too. It, like you said, it looks more like a 70s movie. But it also, it's very New York because they filmed it in New York, but they don't go to any of the tourist traps. They don't spend any time in Midtown. You don't see Times Square. It's kind of parts of New York you didn't see much of in movies back then. I think that gives it a different New York kind of feel than anything else from the early 80s. Yeah. I don't know how'd you feel about the score?
I liked it. I liked the score.
Right?
The music was cool.
Yeah.
It was tense. It had like a definite like horror feel to it, and I remember hearing the music and thinking like this has a good score. I was into it.
It stands out for sure.
It does stand out. So yeah, so I see the first scene. That one guy gets its hand like lopped off by some crazy wolf monster that you don't ever get to see, at least until the very end. And the wolf vision, the backdrop, the music, I'm into it. I'm like, okay, this looks pretty cool so far. And then Albert Finney enters the screen, and I barked out loud with laughter. I was like, what the fuck is going on?
What's your problem with Albert Finney, brah?
I don't have a problem with Albert Finney, the actor, but like, I'm sorry. And maybe he was a product of the 70s, but he enters the frame and he's got that big 70s puffy hair. He's wearing like, he's got that crazy, and he's supposed to be some hard-boiled cop, right? Some rough, gruff detective, and he enters the story. I think he's jogging.
Yeah,
he's got some weird gray sweats on and like a red bandana.
Yeah, he looks like Dewey Cox jogging, yogging.
Yogging. It looked like a bad Rocky knockoff, but like he also didn't look like he worked out a day in his life.
Well, he also goes to the store right away and buys like a 10-pound Sunday New York Times and a bag of groceries that includes at least a box of donuts that he starts eating at a crime scene. So
yeah,
you kind of get the feeling he's on the wagon trying to shape up.
He looked ridiculous. And then he gets into like every other scene he's in with like regular clothes on. And I'm like, who dressed this guy? He's got his big poofy lady hair, but it's juxtaposed against like the fact that he's chomped down on this big grody cigar, and he's like drinking like whiskey out of a coffee mug. But he's dressed like a fucking Oxford professor. He's got his like tweed,
dressed a little weird
tweed jacket, and at one point he had like one of those weird sweaters on. All he was missing was like a leather-bound book and a pipe, and he would look right at home in a university. But he's supposed to be gritty New York cop. I was like, I didn't buy it at all.
I thought he came across more as like the weird New York cop, like the weird detective who nobody else
like
really
the one
talked
with all
to.
the theories.
Maybe, or just the one who didn't go with the flow that much, like the black sheep. Maybe I never do anything to overtly say that, but I like when he comes up with the wild theory. Nobody seems super surprised, like no one's like, oh, this is so uncharacteristic for you to come up with this crazy pack of ultra smart wolves prowling New York theory. They're just kind of like, you crazy fuck. We'll just keep doing cop work while you just, hang out with this lady and look for wolves and get Gregory Hines wasted. All right. What else?
Gregory Hines. It was another one.
Wild casting.
I had seen Gregory Hines and other stuff when I was a kid, but like I don't know what it was. I seem to remember him tap dancing.
Oh, he tap danced a lot, yeah. And I think he was on Sesame Street and shit. He did a lot of kids stuff.
Yeah,
kids
that's how I
programs.
knew him. And then the next thing I see, he's got that big earring, and he's hanging his ass out the window.
Yeah, and he's hanging out in a morgue a lot, playing with dead people. That morgue scene creeps me out. That's one of the more realistic, unflinching. This is probably what it's like. Morgues, like if they told me they filmed that in a real morgue, I'd believe it.
Yeah, it looks like they did.
Looks rough. I mean, like an operating morgue, like if those were actually bodies. If they were a little more pale and dead looking, I'd believe it. Yeah. All right. What about?
It was cool. It was cool, man. It just.
What about the wolf guy? What about the wolf expert? Did you recognize him?
Yeah, man. What was that?
Tom Noonan.
Tom Noonan.
Tom
the Tooth
Noonan.
Fairy.
That's it, man. The Tooth Fairy himself. The bad guy from Last Action Hero. Tom Noonan.
Yeah. He doesn't look
young.
nearly as crazy in that movie.
Nah, he was real young in that, man. Colored hair and everything.
He gets et.
He died real dumb. That was a real dumb way to go.
Well, yeah, I forget. He was on his motorbike. Yeah, it just ran up and bit his neck, right?
Yeah, well, he works at that zoo in Central Park. And, he's riding that motorbike underneath those bridges in Central Park where everyone just basically got raped and robbed in 70s movies underneath those walkways.
Oh, yeah.
They even use one of those in Wolf, the Jack Nicholson movie.
They do.
Yeah. And he stops like under one of those and they surround his ass. It was very stupid thing to do.
Yeah.
All right, so what else was there anything else you didn't like?
I mean, well,
other than Albert Finney's aesthetic?
a lot of it had to do with Albert Finney. I couldn't rip my mind away from how he looked. How stupid he looked. I'm sorry. Maybe that's petty of me, but at the same time, the young woman detective, she was fine, and they had an interesting relationship.
You know who that actress is?
No, she looked familiar. Who is that?
She played Vincent Hanna's girlfriend in Heat.
Oh, yep.
What you would know her most from. She's been a lot. Look at her filmography. She's been a bunch of shit. But that's where you know her face from.
Yeah, I knew she looked familiar. That part, yeah, she was cool. Didn't they hook up, her and Albert Finney?
I don't think they did.
Think they did. I think they did.
All right.
And the one of the Wolfen was watching through the window.
All right, maybe that sounds right.
So yeah, so then it gets to a point where like he's on to what's happening. He gets Gregory Hines to stake out the South Bronx with him with their crazy gigantic hunting rifle scopes in the night.
Those were real. Those were like the earliest night vision scopes.
They were huge.
Yeah, they were huge. They were almost like the Starlight scopes they used in Vietnam, but a little smaller and lighter, so they could be mounted on a gun.
Yeah,
but they had to be giant to collect enough light for
I get it.
Primitive scope to work. Like they are so goofy looking. They're huge.
Yeah, so they're staking that out. Gregory Hines gets and then they just did he suspect Edward James Olmos earlier in the movie? Because one of the things that happened, this is one of the points where like I started to nod off and like I bolt awake because I hear some noise, and the first thing I see is Edward James Olmos bare ass naked, just sprinting full flat out through the Bronx, just
hanging dong.
And like I kind of missed the context there and missed the explanation as to why he was doing.
Well, did you see the scene on the bridge before?
Yeah,
that?
when he has to clip in and walk up the bridge.
That gives me loose bowels too, because I hate heights like that.
You don't like heights.
Not man-made heights like that. It freaks me out. Anyway, he says some shit up there about shape-shifting. And
yes,
indicating that, even if he isn't actually a shapeshifter, that he might be responsible for this in some way.
Yeah, he alludes to it.
Yeah, because he had a murder in his past. That's how Albert Finney knows him. He busted him for manslaughter.
Right.
He mentions it in passing in dialogue. But yeah, that's the deal. At that point, he suspects him, and he just kind of follows him to that beach where I just assume pretends to lycanthrope out just to fuck with him. Because he just seems to like to fuck with Albert Finney.
Yeah.
And he kind of deserves
and then he's the one that clues him in later to what's really going on.
Yeah, he gets the big X-Pos dump in the bar after Gregory Hines eats it or gets eaten.
Native American jive.
That's funny. It was a concise enough exposition dump. They didn't feel too good. And by that time, you needed it. Like, by that time in the movie, you're like, all right, someone has to explain to me what the fuck is going on.
Yeah, something's happening. They didn't show you yet. You need something. They got to throw you a bone.
All right, the thing.
And then
go ahead.
They that conversation. I think they mentioned like there's a line about the elk that runs away from the deer. If it stands its ground, the wolves will go away. But if it runs, it signals that it's ready to die, and then they go and they eat the damn thing. And I remember thinking, like, that's kind of creepy. And then they winds up coming back. They call back to that in that final scene, which was equal parts awesome and silly.
Oh, the very end. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I fully admit it is a goofy ending. It is a goofy ending. But up until that, it's pretty awesome.
Dude, that scene in front of the building.
Yeah, on the street with his boss. Yeah.
And his boss runs away. It's revealed that there's not one, but there's a whole pack.
Fucking wolf in the back seat, man.
Wolfen.
Dude, that was hardcore shit.
You see his head go flying through the
Yeah, that looked pretty good. And
then the mouth was still
when
moving.
it's on the ground. Yeah, and in the beginning, the bodyguard's severed hand with the pistol, like it relaxes. Remember, there's that shot of the fingers opening up. Like, I don't know, that shit looked real, man. I give him credit. That was pretty solid.
Pretty good.
That was pretty solid.
Albert Finney did like just take one shot at the car and blow it up, which I'm
That
pretty
was
sure you
goofy
can't
as
do.
shit. That was goofy. They did that on Mythbusters just to be sure. No, it doesn't work.
Yeah, you can't explode a car just by shooting at
It
it.
doesn't work. But I mean, it's a movie about supernaturally smart wolves. They're not really supernatural, actually. I don't think. But all right, two things that really creep me out.
Well, if if they're not supernatural, how the hell did that one, like I guess the boss wolf, the one white wolf,
Yeah.
wind up crashing through the plate glass window in like the penthouse
We
apartment?
have to discount the end. The end makes no goddamn sense.
It's like how many floors up are they?
I have no idea, but they're in a tall
jumps through the
building.
window.
They're in a tall fuck building. I don't know how the wolves got up there, and then they disappear. They just did.
Right.
They just vanish. Like I don't. The ending makes no goddamn sense. I'm sorry. I can't help you with the ending. They didn't know what to do with the ending. I guess all they had to do was have it take place somewhere else. But then how could he smash the model? Like.
Yeah, he had to go in there and bash the
Like
building
as if
project.
that matters though, because I don't know. Whatever. Ending aside.
Well,
Ending aside. The scene where they go into the nearly completely fallen down church. I don't like
The
that
church.
scene. It freaks me out. Early on when the two go in there and you hear them make the baby noise, that eerie fucking baby noise. That's like a Wendigo story, man. Like that's part of the Wendigo myth, and that part always creeped me out. And then it like kind of turns into a woman's moan, and especially with the wind effect, that was very, very fucking creepy.
Is that the part where she's going up? The woman is going up the stairs,
And he gets her at the last minute.
grabs her, and pulls her out of there.
Something about the way that's paced and shot, and that noise, the sound effects, it just creeps me the fuck out, dude. And the fact that was enough that they were able to track them that night from their smell through the city.
Right.
That was wild to me. Like that was another layer of creepy. And the fact that they were
scent.
like the idea of wolves that were just almost as smart as people is really kind of creepy. If you think about it, for like any animal that has a physical advantage over us being as smart as us is creepy. You know?
Right. Yeah. That's a terrifying prospect.
Like they have motivation. You know? They have dedication to finding you. You know? Like normally animals, it's like if you get far enough away from them, leave them alone. No, they'll come after you, like because they watched you at a groundbreaking ceremony. It's fucked up, right? Like that's fucked up and scary.
So that's why they killed the one guy, because they saw him. You know, they figured out he was the lead guy breaking ground in their their hood.
Yeah, and then Edward James almost breaks that bottle on their car. And I always just assumed that was like a marking thing, like this is their car. Although I don't know how that works. Or maybe they were just unrelated. Maybe it was just a red herring when he throws that bottle of liquid, you know.
Yeah, he's on the bridge, and he
yeah.
tosses the bottle.
Yeah, maybe that was just a red herring because that's really early on. You might not remember later on. I don't know. That one doesn't add up. But yeah. Yeah, and that whole scene is very good. The opening in the park. It's
a good scene.
All right, I'm glad you liked it. That's great, man. 1981, Wolfen.
Wolfen.
The name is terrible. This was based on a book. This was an adaptation of a pulpy, shitty novel that I actually read. It is terrible. It was so bad. It's one of those books like you're reading it and you're like, I was like rewriting it in my head, like how this should have gone.
That's funny.
It had like a decent core idea. It was like someone came up with a really good idea and then had to learn how to write to wrap a book around it in a week.
Yeah, the idea came before the writing.
The script,
talent.
The script for this film was far better. All right. Moving on to another 1980s werewolf movie. I just watched
Oh
this.
boy.
I just watched this again. I got it on 4K, and I gotta say it looks great. 1985 Silver Bullet. What a magic year for movies. What a magic year. This is not a great movie. This is a flick that's based on they call it in the credits in the movie, they call it a novelette. Not a novella, but a novelette. It's
even smaller.
It's a short fucking story Stephen King wrote, and it's not part of a collection. It kind of came out on its own, called Cycle of the Werewolf. And it had a bunch of illustrations in it. And it was released like in a large format paperback, almost like a graphic novel. So I guess they didn't know what to call it. Anyway, this is an adaptation of that. It's one of Corey Haim's first movies, directed by a guy named Daniel Adias. Nobody knows. He mostly did a bunch of TV. And it shows because this kind of looks like a TV movie. Like there's parts of this that really do look like a TV movie. Gary Busey, who I love in this. He's fantastic. He's young, pre-motorcycle accident. He's all there. Awesome. Everett McGill, if you know him, you know his face.
I know that name.
Played a bad guy a lot. He was the bad guy in Under Siege 2, off the top of my head.
Oh, yeah. The one with the curly hair?
No, the other one. The military looking guy with the severe face and the leather jacket.
Oh,
He's the priest in this.
Everett McGill. I can't picture him. I'm sure I've seen him.
You remember Heartbreak Ridge?
Yeah, Everett McGill.
Okay.
I'm looking at him now.
Yeah.
I recognize him.
He was
Yeah,
also
he
the
does
jerk
have a
off
very
in
severe
Heartbreak Ridge.
face.
He does. Severe face. He used to have very severe hairline. Good bad guy, though. Good bad guy. Not too much else in the cast. Terry O'Quinn's in there.
Oh, you
him
know what
from
else
Lost
he's in?
And what?
I'm looking at it right now.
Who, Everett?
He rose to prominence for his role in the film Quest for Fire. He was a
Everett
caveman
McGill?
in Quest for Fire. We talked about that.
Yeah, he was. He absolutely was. Him and all the boys.
Ron Perlman. Was that the one with Ron Perlman?
Yeah, Ron Perlman, but he didn't have to wear makeup. He was just in it.
Oh, that's funny.
What a weird fucking movie, man. Yeah, he was real young in that too. That was in 81. That one from 81. But all right, so Silver Bullet, I can't, it's really hard for me to explain why I like this so much. It's one of those few movies that I turn it on and it really reminds me of being a kid. It reminds me of the 80s. I guess maybe because it looks more like the 80s really did than a lot of movies. In that everything looks like it's from the 70s, except a few things,
Right.
like houses and interior decorating and furniture. It's all at least a few years old. And that's what everything looked like when we were little, Very few people had brand new everything.
Right.
And, but like the kids' backpacks are bright colored, like they would have been in 85, like neon pink and shit, but their clothes aren't neon. Like people didn't wear day glow clothes every day.
Yeah. The 80s hadn't become the 80s yet.
Yeah. Yeah, like to me that shit's more from the 90s. And like we grew up in New Jersey. Like we didn't grow up in the sticks of wherever the fuck. We weren't that far out of pace. But, that Dayglow shit wasn't around yet. The 80s were a different feel until, unless you were in a boy band or really into fucking Poison, it wasn't happening. And everyone dresses really realistically in this. Like there's a lot of, plaid shirts and just normal looking shit, and it's got a neat setup. Corey Haim is Marty, who's a paraplegic. He can't walk. He's in a wheelchair. His Uncle Red built him a a motorized wheelchair, literally has a motor on it, like a lawnmower engine, and it's called Silver Bullet, right? And then later in the movie, he gives him a souped-up new version that's basically a like a little motorcycle with a seat on it instead of a bike seat, so that he can ride it, which is pretty fucking awesome. Like, it's cool. It's like a very 80s thing also. It was in the book, though. And the setup is that there's a werewolf in town. They live in a small town in Maine, as you would expect, Tarker's Mill, and a werewolf starts killing someone every month. And the worst part about it in the book was what it did to the town and the townspeople being on that cycle, the titular cycle of the novel, that someone got killed every month. It was just enough time for people to start starting to heal from the last one and to start thinking maybe it won't happen again. And then it does.
Okay.
But the movie truncates it a bit. Instead of taking place over an entire year, it takes place over, I think, like 5 months, like basically from May through the summer, till September, I think. But it's a movie, time in movies, whatever. And Uncle Gary Busey is Uncle Red, who's Marty's mom's brother, who loves him to death. He doesn't have any kids, and when we meet him, he's recently divorced and drinking a bit. But the story takes place over a few months. By the end of the movie, he's getting his shit together and he's not drinking anymore. Great. The story is told from the perspective of Jane, who's Marty's sister, and she's got some ill-advised voiceovers as an adult, and she's like a tween in the story.
A tween.
The voiceovers are dated and very TV movie like movie of the week. So I don't really dig that. I think that was a mistake. It's something you got to look past. The editing on this is sloppy. Like, it's kind of a little messy in places. You can definitely tell there's one scene that there are two scenes in the bar that definitely were one continuous scene at some point. But for some reason they broke them up and pretended time passed in between them, even though everyone is wearing the exact same thing they are in the first half of the scene. Like the deputy is in it, and he's got his clip-on tie undone with his top shirt button unbuttoned, and it's like hanging off to the side. It looks exactly the same, and he even continues an argument with the one guy that he starts in the first half of the scene, but it's separated by like a whole chunk of time. It's ridiculous. I have no idea why they did it either. They could have just left it. I don't know. But
I have a question.
What?
So it's a goofy werewolf movie from the 80s. It's got some editing problems. It's got not necessarily the best director. It feels like a made-for-TV movie. There's some questionable voiceovers. All that aside, why do you love it? What makes you love this movie?
I think it's because it's unconventional, and I think it's about something in a werewolf story you don't see very often. And it's also there's a couple kinds of werewolf movies, right? There's the kind where the protagonist is the werewolf, and the audience knows and the protagonist knows who the werewolf is through the whole movie, right? Like the Wolfman,
like the
American Werewolf in London,
the OG.
a lot of them. And then there's the other kind where it's from the perspective of victims, I guess you could say, potential victims, and who the werewolf is part of the mystery. That's the mystery of the movie, is figuring out who the werewolf is. And that's what this one is. And it's very much of the monsters in your community. It's kind of an allegory for a serial killer is what it really is. And I like the setup of the protagonist being so physically disadvantaged You know, like it's a very vulnerable, scary premise.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And there's also something else, the behavior of the monster in this. Most of the time, when someone in a movie turns into a werewolf, they just kind of attack whoever they happen upon, right? Like maybe they go into town and just start, like they just kill whoever they come across. The Wolfman had this idea that wasn't really deeply explored. It was kind of just tacked on, and they did it a little bit at the end, that the werewolf kills people that the person loves the most.
Oh.
Right? And the old Wolfman did this, like, because at the very end, he's going after, what's her name? The chick from the antique store.
Yeah.
Jane?
I don't know. I don't remember her
They're
name.
all Jane, whatever. He was going after her at the end, but every scene with the Wolfman, it was the same. He was in the woods. Like, it was very hard to tell what was actually going on unless you listened. And that kind of got lost. Usually the wolf is just like a monster, just a wild animal, you know? In Silver Bullet, the wolf kills people partly involving motivations of the human version of itself. All right. So in this story, the werewolf is the priest. I'm going to blow the mystery for you, but you would be able to guess it from the beginning. The werewolf is the priest, the town priest, which is a nice little touch too on top of everything. And they don't tell you how he becomes a werewolf either, which I like. There's no fucking origin story.
He just is.
He just is. And you know, what the fuck was I saying? I lost it.
Yeah, you find out that the priest is the werewolf, and
oh, okay. So as the priest, he hears people's confessions, right?
Okay.
So he knows
his motivations for who he goes after.
He knows all the sordid shit people are doing. And one of the victims is a woman who has been sleeping with a married guy, and he knocks her up, and she decides she's going to kill herself because he tells her to go get fucked, and it's not his kid, right? And she like lives with her mom, and there's no dad. Like her mom's older; she's in her 20s, at least. So when we see her have a little fight with the boyfriend, and then she's in her room and she's like in the process of taking a whole bottle of Seconal, right?
Ooh!
And the fucking werewolf actually climbs up the lattice on the outside of her house, breaks through the window, and like rips her apart in her bedroom. First off, you don't see that shit happen in werewolf movies very often. Usually if you're in your house, you're like, okay, you know? It's people who go out on the moors.
Stumbling through the woods.
Yeah. People who go out on the moors are the ones who get eaten. But this thing and the reason it did that was because as a priest, he was saving her from hell. Because if she committed a suicide and a murder of the unborn child, she was going to hell. So it's like a twisted version of the priest's deepest motivations. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he wasn't trying to punish her. He was trying to. That's kind of a neat twist.
And it's not specifically the way it's executed in this movie that I like. I just like that idea applied to a werewolf story. I think it makes it deeper and more interesting, you know? And I also...
Maybe that's why you like it. It's a werewolf movie from the Catholic perspective.
A little bit, but also, dude, they filmed it in a very real suburb that clearly was old, like old enough. Like you get the feeling it was either built right after the war or during. And it's got like some old fashioned shit, like the sister's in town, and there's a sign on a general store, sort of like a 5 and dime, and it says sick room supplies. You know what I mean? Like that's a old term, you know, and I think that hits because we grew up in a old town, you know, that's a little bit more of an urbanized suburb, but it's still a suburb. And there's a lot of weird
It had
old
a 5
shit.
and dime.
Yeah, we did. Ed Mars is still there where the old Five
Yeah.
and Dime used to be. And, there, especially when we were young in the 80s and 90s, there were a lot of relics of the old days still around, And this movie had that feel, and the ending especially, when they're in the very normal suburban house waiting for the werewolf to come get them. And they have one silver bullet in their defense. And I also have a theory about this movie. And I'm pretty sure I'm
theory.
right. So it's called Silver Bullet, right? It's not called Silver Bullet because they kill the werewolf with a silver bullet. That's the name of Marty's wheelchair that his uncle makes for him. Okay?
Right.
That's why it's called that. They assume that they need a silver bullet to kill the werewolf, but they don't know that. They establish that it doesn't follow normal werewolf rules and that it can change on nights other than the full moon. The movie does establish that.
Oh, it doesn't need a full moon?
In the book, I think he turned more into the werewolf as the moon got full. Kind of like Wolf, the Jack Nicholson one.
Yeah, it was like a month-long process.
Yeah, and at peak full moon, he was the most werewolf, right? So the rules are fuzzy. They're not following typical movie werewolf rules. And when Marty first runs into the werewolf, they cancel the 4th of July fireworks show because the werewolf is killing people, right?
That's a problem.
Yeah, and Marty's all depressed because the werewolf already killed his best friend, killed his would-be girlfriend's dad, so she had to leave town, and they canceled his 4th of July fireworks. So Uncle Red gives him a bag of fireworks, right? He goes out to this little bridge not near his house, but close enough that he could go on his wheelchair thing, and shoots off some fireworks, and the werewolf comes and tries to eat him. Well, he shoots a bottle rocket and it sticks right in the fucking werewolf's eye. And that's how they identify who he is as a human, because he's missing an eye now.
Because of the injury.
Now, this means he doesn't heal super fast or anything. And whatever damage is done to him as a werewolf, he carries as a person, because he's missing an eye as a person and as a werewolf. And the bottle rocket wasn't silver. So it stands to reason that if you can maim him with normal things and it doesn't heal, you could probably kill him with normal shit. So my point is, because of the saturation of werewolf myths, they pin all their hopes on one single handmade silver bullet when they probably could have just killed it with normal
anything.
44 Magnum ammunition that they had and would have done just fine. See, that's the problem with werewolf stories. It's hard to believe. The only way it would make sense is if it's some supernatural thing where the regular bullets just bounce off, because I don't care what it is. If you blow its head apart with a shotgun, it's going to be fucking dead. Unless the head grows back, and you got to show that shit, and then you're getting into some weirdness. You know what I mean?
They did it in Monster Squad. They remember he puts a stick of dynamite in his pants,
and they had the balls to show it. He just came the fuck back together, and they were like, "Yeah, this," and the pants too. He healed his pants, pant legs healed.
The pants.
I never understood how that happened. I just accepted it and went.
It's called the rating system, dude.
You can't show. He has wolf dork. Wolf dork. I got to say also in the cons column for this movie, worst werewolf ever. Bar
Really?
none. There's a whole big trivia entry on IMDb about why it's all fucked up, but they started filming without a finished werewolf design, and some people say Stephen King wanted it to be a understated werewolf, he didn't want something from The Howling, a big monster, but they took that to mean make it look like a half human. It basically ended up looking like a person in a black bear costume, is what it ended up looking like. And they even used bear fur to make the costume, and it just made it end up looking like a fucking bear.
That sounds.
The muzzle
not very
isn't
good.
that long, so it doesn't really, it looks more like a bear than a canine. Nothing about it looks like canine at all. The transformation scene is not bad, which makes it all the stranger that the werewolf didn't come out. And you don't see it much, but when you do, you kind of got to laugh a little bit.
Right.
Which is a shame because everything else looked and felt really good. And there's a great a nightmare sequence where an entire congregation of a church starts transforming into werewolves. And that's pretty fucking gnarly.
A whole church.
Yeah, it's a
transforms?
nightmare. Yeah, at a funeral. The
I got
whole
it.
Congregation starts transforming all at once.
That sounds like it would be cool, though.
It is. It's really cool. And the makeup is really, really good. And every stage of makeup is great except the final monster, which is a fucking shame. There's also a really cool scene where a gunsmith makes the silver bullet, which I kind of like because they show stuff they don't usually show, and it's pretty accurate, except for the fact that it's a lot harder to make a goddamn silver bullet than you'd think. I had to research this for a story not too long ago, and it's not that easy. It's not that easy. No, silver has a much higher melting point than lead. It's like up at 1,400 degrees, which is pretty fucking hot. Like you can melt lead over a campfire,
Oh yeah.
but
It's pretty doable.
silver, you need like a serious jeweler's furnace to melt that. And then it shrinks as it cools, unlike lead. And then it's ultra hard when it cools and can be brittle. Like jewelry has other metals added to make the silver less brittle, usually like nickel
buff
and
it
other
up.
stuff. Like not a lot. It's usually like 92% silver, I think, and then some additives. Like that's most pure metals, right? But if it has to be pure silver, then it's going to be really brittle, which is a problem. So it's tough to get it sized right. And part of the reason lead and copper work in guns is because they're softer and they conform to the rifling on the way down the barrel, which makes them spin. In the silver, if it's too hard, it's not going to catch the rifling and it's not going to spin.
Or it'll fuck it up.
Yeah, it could. I mean, steel is harder than silver, but still, it could tumble. Probably won't be accurate at all. And also, silver is way less dense than lead, too. So the same size bullet would be a lot lighter, which not necessarily good, but you get more speed. I don't know. When they came up with the idea for a silver bullet killing a werewolf, they were talking about musket balls, is what they were talking about. Which
Right, because you could make those.
Yeah, it's a much easier proposition. All you're doing is making a round ball, and with a musket, the fit was way less precise because you wrapped the musket ball in a piece of cloth before you shoved it down the barrel with the ramrod, and that's how it fit tightly enough to create enough pressure behind it to launch it. Was that piece of cloth. So it makes a lot more sense when you're talking about a simple musket ball. But yeah, modern silver bullet like the Lone Ranger had in a cartridge is a more difficult. It can be done, but it's not as easy as they make it look in the movies,
Right.
Especially in even this movie too. But they actually do show him using a reloading press to seat the bullet in the casing in this, which is kind of neat. And they made it a .44 Magnum, so it's big enough to look impressive, as a handgun round.
That is a big gun.
Yeah, it's sizable, but manageable. I like the .44 Magnum. I do.
I bet you do.
I do. Yeah. I think it's a little more realistic than Rudy making silver bullets in his shop class in high school.
I was just gonna mention that. Yeah, like what's the hottest fire you could get going in a high school shop class?
I don't know. He's got a pretty serious looking furnace, but the problem is he uses regular bullet molds, made for lead, which I think the molten silver would probably melt. and also, like, there's the little nib from where you pour the silver in. And when it's lead, there's this little cover that you hit with a hammer, and it breaks that piece off because it's lead, and lead's soft. You can't do that with silver.
You know how why they did that way? Because the average schmuck doesn't know that lead has a low melting point.
No.
And that's what they used because it looks like silver. It looks like liquid silver when it's melted.
Oh yeah, sure. It's just it looks like mercury.
It's a perfect.
Everything looks
it's a
like
perfect
mercury.
Prop.
Yeah. I would have had no idea about any of this shit if I didn't have to look it up for story.
Oh yeah, if I ever have to kill a werewolf, I'll just do that because it looked easy enough.
Yeah, it turns out the silver cane from the Wolfman was a better idea. But
yeah, a whacking stick.
If you haven't, if you're looking for a werewolf movie that you can laugh at a little bit, but it's also a lot of fun, go for Silver Bullet this Halloween, I think.
I'll check it out.
Especially if you haven't seen it, you can laugh at it for all its 80s-ness and remember what I said about it feeling like a TV movie, because it's almost absurd how much it feels like a TV movie, like it's a satire almost. And Gary Busey is fantastic. The way this guy chugs a bottle of Jim Beam is impressive. Like he has like a whole like blowjob mouth grip on the bottle that I've never seen someone execute before. And it's something to behold.
Well, if anyone's gonna do it, may as well be him.
All right, I guess so, man. I guess so. All right, Silver Bullet, Wolfen,
Silver Bullet,
Werewolves, Halloween. Happy fucking Halloween, everybody.